Hello and welcome to The Other Marthas, the show where a drama student and a film graduate try to make sense of things we wish we were qualified in instead, with an emphasis on history, mystery, and all things morbid. A quick disclaimer before we get started: we don't claim to be experts in any of the topics we'll be discussing, so while everything we say will be based on individual research, it's all just a bit of fun, and we suggest that you take everything we say with a pinch of salt. I'm Martha, I'm the drama student.
And I'm the other Martha, the film graduate.
So Martha, what are we going to be talking about today?
Today, Martha, I have for you a 120-year-old mystery. Ooh. Some people believe it to be unsolved. I believe it to be solved. So, you know,
fascinating.
Shows that I'm cleverer than some people.
So from 1900?
1900, yes.
Ooh, tell me more.
Ooh, I shall. Our tale is set upon one of the Flannan Isles in Scotland.
Lovely.
Which is an uninhabited rocky island off the west coast of Scotland.
Okay.
So if you set the scene for yourself.
Craggy, yeah, no, I'm here. I'm just writing off your uncertainty.
Oh no, I'm not uncertain. I just to be honest with you, I've been oil painting today, and I have a brush cleaner that claims to be fume free and scented like oranges. Not only is it not fume free, the fumes smell like the most disgusting oranges you've ever heard of in your life. So my brain will be working on a slightly different scale than normal.
That's fair. And I'm just in a foul mood today, so we'll just see how we get on.
Wow. Woo! Cursed episode. Right, let's get on with the mystery. We are on the largest of the Flannan Isles, which is called Eilean Mor, and it has a little fun legend surrounding it. So I thought I would share that with you, which is that there is magical grass on Eilean Mor, and if sheep eat the magical grass, they will birth twins.
Aww.
And so shepherds will row their little sheep out to the Flannan Isles. Well, don't think they do it anymore.
Yeah.
And they get their sheep to graze there. But nobody ever stays overnight because there is a spirit that haunts the island.
Oh.
Ooh, scary. So in 1896, a lighthouse was built on the largest island, Eilean Mor, where we are, which, fun fact, Eilean Mor is Gaelic for largest island.
Ah.
I looked it up because I was like, oh, some Gaelic, how romantic. Let's see what it means.
Yeah, it's all really uncreative. It's like Machu Picchu. I think it means all mountain.
Right.
And it's like, oh, what a beautiful romantic old Quechua name. Hooray, untainted by the conquistadors. And it just means, look, a mountain.
All of this land is mountain.
It's mountain. Oh, well.
Yeah. I mean, it does the job, though. It's just that we want old things
want it to be
romantic.
Yeah, but to be fair, I mean, from the point of view of if it's just what you call something, then the big mountain is probably more helpful than like the peak of eagle cresting god.
Yeah, it's like we have some fields near me, and I call them the big field and the small field.
Right. Makes sense.
It's exactly the same thing, because it's like one's a big one and one's a small one, and it's easy to tell which one's which. Oh, also, if you can hear any sort of bird song, screeching children, anything like that, I've got my window open because of the
fume situation.
It's the drugs, the fumes. So in 1899, construction upon the lighthouse has been completed. We've got a lovely shiny new lighthouse that we love. The way that the lighthouse light system works is that there are a series of pulleys that must be wound every half an hour to 45 minutes to keep the light on. So it's quite labour intensive. Yeah. So they've got 2 crews of 3 men working on a 28-day shift pattern where they work 4 hours on, 4 hours off throughout the night.
Wow.
Every single day for 28 days. Nightmare.
Blimey.
Yeah. So they would work, they do 6 p.m. till 10, then 10 till 2, then 2 till 6. And then throughout the day, they would also work on the upkeep of the lighthouse and the island as well. So they are busy lads. This brings us to our tale.
Yay!
So, mid-December 1900, on the island are James Ducat, who is the principal keeper, who has a wife and 4 children and 20 years of experience.
Okay.
We have Donald MacArthur, who is an occasional keeper. So what he is on the surrounding islands and in the Scottish Highlands, they'll train up local people to be lighthouse keepers in case one of the lighthouse keepers gets ill or dies or whatever, so that they have someone. And that's what Donald MacArthur is. And he's replacing William Ross, who was ill. And he is married and is 40 years old. Bit of info for you on MacArthur. And then we have Thomas Marshall, who is the second assistant lighthouse keeper, and he's 28. I have no more information about him.
Fair enough.
10th of December, 1900. It's a Friday. At 10 p.m, MacArthur replaces Ducat. At 2 a.m, MacArthur switches with Marshall, and then MacArthur cooks them a lovely breakfast, which they all eat together. Everything works beautifully as normal, and at 1 o'clock they eat lunch, and after that they all vanish. Da, da, da. On midnight, the 15th of December, a steamship, Arctur, passes by within 5 to 6 miles of the island, and Captain Holman notices that he can't see the light, and it's a clear night, so he should be able to see the light.
Yeah.
Because it's a lighthouse and that's their job. So once at port, Holman reports.
A whole man reports.
A whole man! Holman reports his sighting once at port, but he reports it on the 18th of December, and it isn't passed along to the Northern Lighthouse Board until the 28th of December. So it's not ideal.
No.
Then on the 26th of December, there's a lighthouse relief vessel called the Hesperus, which comes to Eilean Mor and brings them provisions, and also is like, hey, how are you doing? They were meant to come on Christmas Eve, but due to bad weather didn't leave and arrive until the 26th. And the captain notices that the flag isn't raised on the island, and normally they would do this to be like, hey, we've seen you and we are ready for our food. They kind of do it to acknowledge the ship, and it's not raised.
It feels like such a sweet system.
Yes.
Even though it's just the way, it's just people going about their lives quite arduously. It seems so like chocolate box.
We put our little flag up when the ship comes. So the Hesperus sounds the horn, hoping to get the attention of the lighthouse keepers, and there's no response. So then they fire a flare, and again, there's no response. When they get close to the shore, they see that no provision box has been left out, which they would normally do.
Okay.
And so on the ship is a little man called Joseph Moore, who is the relief lighthouse keeper. So my assumption is that it's normal for him to go. Maybe he goes in case someone's ill and needs to be taken. I don't know. It would make sense if that was the case, but he's on the Hesperus, and so he clambers ashore via the east landing. Everything appears normal. All the lighthouse gates and doors were closed, but not locked. Which, when I heard this in one of the videos I was watching, I was like, why would you lock your lighthouse anyway? Like, there's nothing of value there, and there's no one else on the island. So
I was
going to
say, like, you have a pretty good vantage point. You live in a tower on a rock. You'll be able to see anyone coming, and anyone who is coming, you'll just be like, what are you doing? You've got the wrong island.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, hey, there's literally nothing here for
Off you pop.
So he goes in, and the kitchen door's open, and he can tell that the fireplace has been unlit for several days, and all of the clocks have stopped.
Oh. Were they clocks that you would
Which-
need to sort of wind regularly?
Yes, because whenever I've heard in like a spooky story, like all the clocks were stopped, I'm like, oh my God, did they show the hour they died? But it's like,
Yeah.
no, if you don't wind them, they will stop. So
Yeah.
So he goes to each room and finds that the beds were unmade and cannot find the lighthouse crew. Mor goes back to the ship and gets more men to help him investigate, and they could not find any clue about why the men were missing. Mor is then left with 4 other men on the island to tend to the lighthouse, and the Hesperus telegraphed the NLB, which is the Northern Lighthouse Board. Would you like to hear the telegraph?
Oh, yes, please. Could you say it in like a crackly, old-timey telegraph voice?
I could, but they're Scottish. And, unless you want Lorraine to be reading, it out.
Whatever you feel best in that case.
So I think I'll just go for my normal voice to avoid my impression of Lorraine. A dreadful accident has happened at the Flannans. The 3 keepers, Ducat, Marshall, and the Occasional, have disappeared from the island. On our arrival there this afternoon, no signs of life was to be seen on the island. Fired a rocket, but as no response was made, managed to land Mor, who went up to the station but found no keepers there. The clocks were stopped, and other signs indicated that the accident must have happened about a week ago. Poor fellows must have been blown over the cliffs or drowned trying to secure a crane or something like that. Or something like that. Night coming on, we could not wait to make further investigation, but will go off again tomorrow morning and try and learn something as to their fate. I have left Mor, MacDonald, Boymaster, and 2 seamen on the island to keep the light burning until you make other arrangements. Will not return to Eilean until I hear from you. I have repeated this wire to Muirhead in case you are not home. I will remain at the telegraph office tonight until it closes if you wish to wire me. Master Hesperus.
Oh, there's something, those sort of, well, I don't know, to a certain extent, about sort of 1960, but I tend to think of it as ending like about after the 1940s. There's just this really polite kind of method of correspondence, which I really like and miss.
Yeah, I think the thing about it is that a telegraph is, I think, the fastest method of transport. It always seems like that's the fastest method of communication aside from just ringing someone up.
Yeah.
And so they're always like, hey, there's an emergency. If you're not home, it's fine.
Yeah, exactly.
I've also let someone else know. So it's like panicked, but it's a letter.
Yeah, exactly. It's a good, and it's a cross between text speak and really formal letter speak, because it's a telegram, so it's like you're trying to not waste your letters or whatever.
Yeah.
But it's like, poor fellows must have been drowned. We'll try to inform you further. Lots of good wishes for your wife. It's just nice.
Yeah. So that was sent on the 26th of December.
Mm-hmm.
The next day, Mor and some other the sailors set off to investigate further.
Mm-hmm.
They also are sent Muirhead, who was mentioned in the telegraph, who was the superintendent of lighthouses, I guess. And he arrives on Eilean Mor with a replacement keeper on the 29th of December.
Mm-hmm.
And he thoroughly investigates the whole situation.
Mm-hmm.
So what they discover is that at the West Landing, there's absolute chaos. So there was a crane there, which was again mentioned in the telegraph, and the previous year they had a crane that was destroyed, but this time it was fine. When they went to the West Landing, they noted that the sea was high, the crane was fine, a tackle box was missing, and they also had a box where they kept all sorts of like various mooring ropes and other ropes. And all of the ropes were found strewn across the rocks, but were still coiled up. The iron railing on the steps was also broken. Some parts were twisted and other parts were missing completely. But what makes this mysterious is that this damage had already been noted in the keeper's log. All of the ropes gone, and the iron railing being broken were already written in the log, which would suggest that they weren't to do with the men going missing, because obviously they've gone back to the lighthouse and written about it.
Yeah. Weird.
There's also a life ring that was normally kept on the railing at 110 feet up the cliff that was missing, and the ropes that were holding the life ring, quote, had not been removed by man.
Oh.
Which implies that the sea did it.
Yeah.
But I like the fact that it could be anything not a man.
Yeah, I was going to say, it makes it sound so sinister. It's like, just say,
it
like,
does, doesn't
rough
it?
weather conditions or something.
Yeah, it's like the ropes look like the sea had ripped, you know, but it's like, had not been removed by man. A lot of people have been like, it's 110 feet. Waves cannot be that high. However, there's this historian called Mike Dash, which is a very dynamic name. And he claims that there's evidence that in 1950, the sea has splashed up to 300 feet on Eilean Mor.
Whoa. So it clearly has happened or can happen.
Thinks it can happen. They also worked out by looking that MacArthur had left behind his oilskin coat and like waterproof outfit, which
in the lighthouse.
In the lighthouse, which you know, mid-December in the Scottish Highlands on an island,
you want it.
You don't really want to do.
No.
They also found the keeper logs had last been fully completed on the 13th of December, but did have the time the light was extinguished on the 15th of December in the morning, and had atmospherics readings up until 9 a.m. on the 15th of December. Also, all of the morning jobs have been completed, leading to the belief that whatever happened in the afternoon, which is where we get they all had lunch and then disappeared.
Right. I have a question at this point, which you might come to address. The bit that that I'm slightly confused on is that their beds were unmade, and I'm wondering, would they still have been sleeping in shifts throughout the day because they didn't get much sleep at night, or did they just not make their beds? Or
my assumption would be that they would sleep a bit in the day, but maybe they didn't. I don't know, because if you have like 3 men who all live together and sleep in shifts, and not just men, people, would you really bother making your bed? Because it's not like, you know, you have polite, but then it's kind of, it feels like almost military to work in a lighthouse.
That's what I was thinking. Like, I feel like because they keep logs of all of the chores that they do, and like, I made breakfast, then so and so washed up, then we all, you know, I don't know, ironed our pants and had a dance.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
It feels very regimented, so it just feels quite odd. But I have no idea. It's pure speculation.
Yeah, I don't know.
Probably had a nap.
They're probably just messy. I'd be messy. I mean, not if everyone else in the lighthouse was like, this is really annoying, we all live in a lighthouse for a month at a time. But, you know, like, not making your bed is like, it's my bed, so who cares?
Yeah.
In the logs, it's also noted that morale had been low among the keepers, and that there had been recent strong storms and wind. But there were no reports from anyone else in the vicinity of storms.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's a bit ooey.
It's spooky, isn't it?
Yeah.
They also found Marshall's personal diary. I don't know whether this is, again, like they would all keep logs of their like personal situation as well, but they found it, and in that he detailed that the storms were so terrifying that the men had prayed.
Oh God.
And Marshall described Ducat as very quiet in recent days, and noted that he'd seen MacArthur crying.
Oh dear.
Yeah. In his final entry, he said, quote, "Storm ended, sea calm, God is over all." Many people don't believe in the authenticity of these logs, and some people think that they're fake, because a lot more sensationalism kind of came around the Flannan Isles after this one guy wrote a poem about it, so some people think they're fake. I don't know. I think they make it sound more fun, so I'm going to believe them.
Agreed. I guess it depends if the logs suddenly rocked up like later when there was a resurgence in the tourism.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, we
Someone
found
was
a
like,
notebook.
oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just enjoy it for the fun mystery. So
Yeah.
So on the 8th of January, we receive a report from the superintendent Merhead, who has seen all of the things that we have seen. Maybe he didn't see Marshall's little diary that was full of gossip. We don't know.
Full of gossip.
And his conclusion after a thorough investigation was most likely that they had gone down to the West Landing to secure boxes.
Mm-hmm.
That Marshall and Ducat went first, and MacArthur then may have seen something happen and then went to rescue them because
Hastily,
he isn't
without
wearing
his
his coat.
oilskins.
And Merhead claimed that he was confident that they were swept away by a large wave.
Sounds
So
quite fair.
That's what he believes. Merhead's come to his conclusion. They've searched the island and found no clues. However, there is another man involved in our tale who may have known what happened. His name is Roderick Mackenzie, and he was paid £8 a year by the Northern Lighthouse Board to watch for signals from the lighthouse that the men needed help. Because they have no radio, no telegraph, they have no way of communicating with land, aside from, here's something you'll find quaint, metal balls on chains on poles to hang from the lighthouse balcony to signal to land that they need help. I would argue that they have a very easy and practical way of signaling from a lighthouse. A big massive light. But apparently not. Apparently we need
that's literally
balls on poles.
People not in lighthouses make lighthouse type situations to signal. Like, that's the whole point.
So I don't know why this is what they went for, but that's what they had as their signal that they
balls on sticks on poles.
Balls on sticks. I suppose it's because one of the things that they could have needed to signal to Roderick was that the light bulb was broken, or that they needed an engineer to come out, and so because that was one of the things that he was paid for. It wasn't like, hey, just in case there's like some sort of murder on the island, please watch out. Like the Northern Lighthouse Board are thinking if the lighthouse breaks, they might need to get in contact.
That's fair. And also I guess they might probably the most times where they'd need to signal for help would be if there was a problem with like a ship that had run aground or something like that, in which case they'd probably want to be shining the lighthouse light at the ship to be like, no, don't, careful, rather than being like, just a second, can you help? Oh crap.
Yeah, it is weird that the lighthouse isn't fitted with some kind of system that they can contact land with, because it feels like if they saw an incident at sea, I don't think that they had any form of like lifeboat or anything. Like, I don't know if they had a way to get themselves off the island. And I also don't like, it just seemed like it would be useful to either contact land or have like some sort of RLNI situation where they can rescue
I agree,
people.
but who knows?
What do we know? We are the Northern Lighthouse Board.
On sticks.
Yep. So Roderick Mackenzie lived 18 miles southeast on Gallon Head. And he was supposed to keep a record of whether he could see the light and if the keepers signaled during the day with the balls on stick. Mackenzie didn't say anything about the fact that the light was off. So investigators went round to his house and interviewed him, and he said that he was unable to see the lighthouse tower between December 7th to the 29th. That the last time he'd seen the light was on December 12th, but not again until Mor turned up on the island and put the light on.
And he just hadn't said anything.
I hadn't thought to mention it.
One job.
One thing about him not being able to see the lighthouse tower would suggest to me that there was bad weather conditions.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, what would cause him not to be able to see it. Like there must be some kind of fog or really heavy rainstorms or something.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
otherwise, did he just have his eyes closed? Like what?
Maybe he was going
So-
blind. Maybe that was the issue. He didn't want to say anything because it
Maybe.
was his
I
source
do
of
think-
income.
I do think that he actually, when he couldn't see the tower, employed his sons to also check more regularly than he did, because he'd just check once a day. So I do
Okay.
think he like took action to try and help, but he didn't report it, which is his
Would
job.
be the help that was perhaps more necessary.
Yeah. He claimed that he had been concerned that he couldn't see the light, but there is no evidence he reported anything. And I've also seen in some reporting upon this that he didn't actually have to inform the lighthouse board if the light wasn't on, only if he received a signal of needing help.
Yeah, I
which
see.
I don't think that there were any balls on chains on sticks hanging out of the balcony
Yeah.
when they went and searched, because that would have made sense to see that. So
Yeah,
it doesn't seem
yeah.
like they were actively signaling for help.
Yeah. That's fair.
I mean, I personally doing that job would have reported something.
As
But
would I, over like a 2-week
you know,
period of nothing.
you've got 3 men's lives in your hands, but just don't mention it, I guess. Also, here's like a really sad part, is that Ducat, who is the lead lighthouse keeper, had previously requested that the Northern Lighthouse Board conduct an experiment to see how long it would take someone on land to notice an issue with the lighthouse and report it, but the experiment was not approved and didn't go ahead.
Oh no.
Yeah, and so maybe if they'd have done that, they would have known that they needed help. But at the same time, if we are to believe Muirhead that they were swept out at sea, like swept out to sea,
Then they
it
wouldn't
doesn't
have signalled
matter.
anyway. It would just
They would have just been dead.
Yeah.
But at the same time, if a ship had come by in that time and sunk and killed everyone on it, then it would have mattered, because
Yeah.
that's 2 weeks where ships are sailing by. But then at the same time, the lighthouse is only a year old, so ships have been doing fine for ages without it. I don't know.
True. Actually,
I mean, maybe they've not. Maybe
what's
there's been
been in the
loads of
lighthouse?
shipwrecks. Well, maybe there have been loads of shipwrecks on
Maybe,
the islands.
Yeah.
Anyway, that brings us to our theories. Obviously, theory 1 is the men were swept out to sea.
Yeah.
Snore.
Seems pretty sound. Snore.
Well,
Time to bring in the Yetis.
It's like, yes, sure, it's the most obvious one. Like, it makes sense because there probably was bad weather and people have just changed the fact that there wasn't bad weather, and it makes sense. But that's so boring. Not for them. Horrible for them. Anyway, so the theory goes that 2 people were trying to rescue the box with the ropes. MacArthur left in a rush to save his colleagues.
Yeah.
There is another theory that they might have been blown from the island by strong winds.
Jesus.
But Muirhead is like, no, it was a wave. So,
all right.
One of the things that doesn't support this theory is that no bodies were ever washed ashore.
That's true. You'd think they just kind of eventually crash back up on there or mainland Scotland.
Yes, but the thing about Eilean Mor and the other ones is that it's cliffs, so they wouldn't wash up on a beach.
No, I see.
There's cliffs, and they've like built steps into the rock.
Yeah,
so they wouldn't wash up there. They'd have to wash up in Scotland, which maybe they have washed up. Maybe they're like, there was like a while ago there was like all feet in shoes washing up on beaches.
Oh my god.
Maybe we'll do an episode on it. But like, they could just be one of those, or they were probably just eaten by that point. It's been 120 years. Like, they're definitely not feet in shoes. They're definitely just like fish food. The other thing is that 2 of them were very experienced and one of them wasn't, because he's a stand-in fella. MacArthur, who's the guy left without his outfit. I can understand why you would leave the least experienced guy in the lighthouse while you go out into a storm to save stuff, because basically people have been like, if they went out in the storm to rescue a box of rope, like why would they rescue a box of rope compared to their lives? That's nothing. But Marshall had previously been fined 5 shillings for negligence and loss of equipment, and so it would make sense that he'd be like, oh, I'm not losing 5 shillings again, I'm gonna go and get this rope in. But it's just weird to me that you leave the least experienced guy in the lighthouse all by himself.
Well, I guess it, if you're, I don't really know, it depends on the size of the island and stuff, but if you're like, I mean, this is a horrible storm, but hopefully it won't take us long. It will take 2 of us, but it won't take us long to just secure this box of ropes and then get back. Like, you're not intending to leave him in charge of the lighthouse for very long.
Yeah, I just had a thought. Well, so one of the most important rules of the lighthouse is, first of all, make sure the light stays on, and second of all, the 3 keepers aren't allowed to leave the lighthouse at the same time.
Yeah, someone has to be in the lighthouse.
So, yes, but I'm thinking, would it make sense that they also don't know MacArthur very well? So they're like, if it goes wrong out there and I need someone to rescue me, I don't want the guy I don't know very well to be rescuing me. He's not going to just a theory.
Put his life on the line for me necessarily.
Well, but it seems like he did.
It does seem like he did. But yes.
So I just find it so interesting because we'll never know exactly what happened. And I just love like all the idea of like all of the little human-y politics life things that would have gone into, and the fact that they were there for like a month with no other no contact to other people.
Yeah, like what was going on, what were the interpersonal relationships?
Yeah, which brings us to our second theory.
Oh God.
Which is a potential psychological breakdown of the men on the island. As we've seen in Marshall's logs, if they are to be believed, it seems like the morale was very low and they were suffering. And also there's the theory that if the storms didn't happen, they were hallucinating storms that were so terrifying that they were praying.
Yeah.
Which is, you know,
a lot.
There's linked to this theory the fact that MacArthur was violent and easily agitated. And so it kind of leads on to the idea that maybe there was a fight between the 3 men that resolved either in them fighting outside and getting hit by a wave, or a murder that was cleaned up very well and then the guy jumped in the sea. You know, it's like,
no, but you can see like a fight going wrong, and then if you're fighting on the edge of a cliff, it's quite easy for something to go a bit skew-whiff.
Very easy.
Accidentally, sort of semi-accidentally push your mate over the cliff, and then you're like, oh my God, and you're trying to save them.
But it could even have been that like one of them murdered another one, and then the guy, right, so one guy's already in the sea, dead, or stabbed and on the floor. Then the murderer is then confronted by the 3rd guy and then pushed in the sea, and then the 3rd guy just gets swept away by a wave. There's all the possibilities, Martha.
That would be the way to get it all in. You've got a homicide. Well, no, a double homicide and an accident.
I think the thing is, the reason why people claim that this is an unsolved mystery, no one knows what's happened, is because no one wants it to be that 3 men were just swept away by a wave in a storm. Everybody wants it to be, oh, there was murder, or perhaps romance, which brings us to the second part of theory 2, that 2 of the men were in love,
right,
and that their relationship soured and it led to a fight and potentially murder.
Okay.
Or I've seen some people say maybe they all sailed away and were in love and it was a happy ending.
Just a happy throuple on a raft in Scotland.
Maybe.
I mean, that's definitely the nicest theory. But also, to be fair though, I feel like if you're, I don't know, I don't claim to understand the pressures of being a gay polyamorous lighthouse keeper in 1900, But
Oh, do you not?
but I would say that if you were in that position, being a lighthouse keeper might be quite nice if your throuple or thruple, whatever your
I
uh,
don't know.
3 people in love were all happened to be on the job in the lighthouse together. It's like, great, well, you can have your little household and then you can all go home to your wives when you go home to your wives, but no one's going to interfere while you're all having your lovely little household in the lighthouse. That's quite a nice place to be. I would take my chances there probably over going out to sea.
Do you know that's actually so cute? I don't think it was that.
No, I think it's unlikely.
Yeah, I think the likelihood of 3 men all falling in love and being lighthouse keepers, I mean, whilst adorable, and also
Really cute.
logistically difficult because they all sleep at different times, which is
That's true.
sad.
Yeah, but it's like, you know when you get I'm gonna stick with thruples as an example
Go for
here,
it.
but in some polyamorous relationships where it's less sort of here's like 3 people who are all in a relationship with each other, but there's, you know, one person who's in a relationship with this person and this person, and it will be like, well,
Mm.
so and so goes to work at
Oh yeah, I suppose so.
9, so then me and so have an hour together, but then when so goes out to work, they're back later, you know, and so
Do you know what I
we have
just
our bit.
thought?
Go on.
There's always 2 asleep at the same time.
There we are.
It
Maybe
works
that's okay.
perfectly.
So right, okay. So if it was a case of they're all a happy throuple of the variety that actually no, it doesn't really matter if they were, but either way, they're a throuple who like to be able to spend time one on one with different pairings, as I assume any person would. And then one of them gets teed off because they feel like they're being ousted by the other two being like the central couple,
Yeah.
and this person's like, look guys, I keep making you breakfast and manning the lighthouse, and I come downstairs and you're cuddling away, and then as soon as it's my turn to have my time off with so and so, you're like, I'm tired, I want to sleep, and I'm like, well then, don't stay up all night canoodling with MacArthur. Yeah.
I just thought of something that's really going to ruin our happy
Oh
theory.
no, go on.
MacArthur's only there because William, whoever, is sick.
Oh yeah.
So
maybe that was
not.
it. The other two, right? So the other two and William are in a throuple.
They're all in a relationship, right? And it's strange when William's not there, and they're like,
Yeah.
"Oh, we don't really work as just a couple."
Yeah, and also they're not sure whether or not to. Is it MacArthur who's the new guy?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. They're not sure like how much to be like, so MacArthur, we're a couple, or whether to be like, let's keep it a secret, or whether to be like, I mean, kind of what we do in this lighthouse is we're all kind of together. Like, would you be interested? It'd just be a whole thing.
Love
It'd be
that.
quite stressful.
I would say the likelihood of it is low because of my realization that MacArthur is not.
But
always
no, okay.
Ross.
So we can retrieve this. So
what if they poisoned William Ross because they were more interested in MacArthur? They were like,
that's not
let's
where
make William Ross ill.
This, but ooh.
Let's get MacArthur on the island for 28 days.
And then they get tired of MacArthur, so they try to lure him onto the cliffs with a fake fight, which goes wrong when MacArthur runs to intervene and ends up getting involved, and then they all just punch each other off the cliff.
Yeah, so that's one theory that took up 2 lines in my notebook. We also have, along the like tale of psychological breakdown, might have been that one might have jumped or run for the edge of the cliff and the others went after him.
That's horrible. Yeah,
but there's no evidence of violence or fighting, and everything's left quite neatly. Some people have said that there was cold food and a chair knocked over in the lighthouse kitchen. But there aren't any reports of that from people at the time, and might have come from this pesky little poem that was written later. I can't remember who wrote it. It was basically this guy was like, oh, let me write a poem that really spooks everyone out about the lighthouse, and he added those details in. So
I think that's more
Yeah.
likely as well, because especially if I'm kind of taking it as read at the moment that whatever happened, the two more experienced guys went out first, and then MacArthur went out in a hurry when it was going badly, just based on
Yeah.
the oilskins thing. If that had happened during lunch, like I feel like that wouldn't have been the case. They'd have had lunch.
There's evidence that they had lunch, cleaned up, and then went and did the stuff.
Mm.
Which I don't know whether maybe they just know like the amount of supplies that they had, so they would know that they'd eaten. But I feel like I suppose they could have like left the washing up on the draining board or something.
That's what
But I'm
I'm
just thinking like,
thinking.
how, if you've cleaned up after lunch, how do they know that they ate lunch?
Well-
Which is why I never clean up after myself after I've eaten a meal,
Well, in
so
case
that
you
people will
go
know.
missing, then you know exactly when you went missing.
Thank you.
Fair. I think my little theory, again, I always picture this lighthouse as like a spick and span little family unit, even before the whole idea of a throuple was introduced.
Yeah, no, it is. Apparently, it's quite neat and kind of runs like clockwork.
Right. So what I'm imagining is that they put, and I could be completely wrong, what I'm imagining is that they put in their logs like had breakfast, washed up, and then it will be like the stuff from breakfast will be in their little drying rack, and then they'll like make lunch, clean up after lunch, put the now dry stuff on the drying rack away, and then put the wet, clean things from lunch into the drying rack. So it will just be
Yeah, I
like,
suppose so.
yes, these are their lunch plates.
Yeah, no, I suppose that makes sense. I just, I'm a messy beast, so I don't know how cleaning up after myself works. So
Fair enough.
I wouldn't know how that, how that counted into the situation. Just letting my mum know I fed the dog, so she
Okay.
doesn't feed him again, because that would be slight chaos. If he's just like, yes, I'll eat again. I love food. Okay. Theory number 3.
God, there's a lot.
Alien abduction.
Oh my god, why are there all these things? It's like, it'd be like if someone, it's sort of one step away from someone just dying of old age, and then someone coming in and being like, is it a homicide though? But why would you assume it is?
I know, but sometimes it's important to do that.
Sometimes it is.
It's important to do that, because there was that horrible doctor,
Harold Shipman.
What was he called? That horrible. He was
Harold
and
Shipman.
yes, and he killed old women, and everyone was like,
did.
oh, I know. I'm just talking about it. And he was like, everyone's like, oh, they're just old women. We don't need to do a post-mortem. No, sometimes they do, because Harold Shipman might have come along, or aliens. And so it's important to consider aliens. I don't believe in this theory because there's literally nothing else on it. Every time someone's mentioned it, they've just gone,
It's like,
alien abduction. And then been like, next theory, please.
Because
there's
it's a
no
shame.
evidence.
You'd think
Like,
at
when
least
we
they'd have
did,
gone into it.
Yeah, I know. Well, when we did the Dyatlov Pass,
Yeah.
and there was the alien theory.
Yeah.
And that at least was like, unexplained radiation, stuff like that.
Yeah, I quite liked that.
With this one, there's like, the life ring was taken from a height. And
Not
it's like,
by
yes, but
human
it's a height
hands.
the waves can reach. Because of the theory that not by human hands. I bet whoever wrote that is like, I wish I had phrased it differently.
Yeah.
It was just a long day.
Next time I'm just gonna put a wave.
The ocean took it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. This now brings us on to theory number 4, which suggests that the men went missing through supernatural or folkloric means.
Right.
There is a theory that water sprites or storms kelpies, or the blue men of Minch, who live in caves.
I'm sorry.
The
blue men of Minch.
No, Minch.
Minch. Sounds like a horrible
think.
euphemism for an STI.
Shall I look it up? See what we get? Because to be honest, I didn't really look into it too much, because I was kind of like, okay, Martha's not going to believe this. She's not going to enjoy it. She's just going to say, oh, it's stupid. So I didn't look into it. I'm going to now.
Oh dear.
Blue men of Minch, also known as storm kelpies.
Oh, okay.
Minch.
Yeah,
anyway,
it doesn't mean anything to me, but.
Well, they're just storm kelpies, and I'm about to tell you what they do. They live in caves and they drown men. And they drown men by sinking their ships. So here's my theory. They'd
Hmm.
really hate lighthouse keepers because lighthouse keepers have come along. It's only a year old. Like, up until this point, the Blue Men of Minch have been like, hey,
Sinking
everyone, come
away
and
their
drown in my
ships.
cave. Yeah. Whereas now the lighthouse keepers are here, they're ruining their trade and they're
Mm.
preventing them from drowning all of these men. And so perhaps they lured them down into the sea, or I don't know how they work. Maybe they crawled up and were like, hello, I'm a water kelpie or whatever. There's that theory.
Hmm.
And the only way to beat a storm kelpie and to not die from a storm kelpie is to have the last word in a rhyming duel with them. I don't know how well these lighthouse keepers would have done in that.
Wow. But ironically, if that poet had been there at the time, they
Yeah.
wouldn't have had a problem. Although then he wouldn't have had
They,
content for his poem, so I suppose you win some,
no,
you
because
lose
if he
some.
did beat if he beat the blue men, then he'd be fine.
Yeah, well, actually, he'd have a better poem because he could
He'd
be
have
like, "Hey, I
better.
met some
He'd
storm
be like,
kelpies and beat them."
it's like you know, Tenacious D have the song. It's called like the best song in the world or something like that, and it's like they sing a song about how they played a song to the devil that was like the best song you've ever heard, but they can't play it again, basically.
That's fun. I like that.
Yeah. And so they're being like, we're the best, but we can't do it. And I feel like that's how the poem would go. It'd be like, oh, I did the best poem you've ever heard, but I can't remember it now, but it was the
I
best.
suppose I'll just have to. You'll have to catch me in a life or death situation with a kelpie again, because that's when I'm at my most poetically fluid.
I could imagine though, then a pesky, like posh man setting up like a fake kelpie sighting
Yeah.
to catch the poet out in his lie, because that's the kind of thing they do.
Yeah, no, I absolutely know what you mean.
So there's some other tales. According to legend, when Mor entered the lighthouse, 3 black birds flew off the lighthouse roof, having been the lighthouse keepers magically transformed into birds for disrespecting the magical isles.
Oh. Does it indicate how they might have disrespected the magical isles?
I think just by being there. I think it's one of those. Because they're magical. Do you remember they're magical because the sheep eat the grass and birth
Yeah. The sheep twins.
Yeah.
I recall.
Yeah. So I think it's one of those. You know, maybe we'll do another episode on the folklore of Eilean Mor, maybe. There's also a theory that a sea serpent came out of the sea and ate them.
Oh, I don't like that, but fair enough.
Yeah. And there's also a theory that a ghost ship sailed by and got the men on board.
Yeah. See, right, I was thinking this, but the possible one, i.e. that a ship, not a ghost ship, came by and they went,
oh, yeah,
screw it, we hate being in this lighthouse, morale is low.
Yeah, because they're having a horrible time. Yeah, that makes sense.
Having a horrible time. Maybe a ship comes by and they have like some banter and they're like, hey, we're looking for 3, I was gonna say stage hands, deck boys, I don't know, deck men.
Deck men? We are the deck men you're looking for. Please allow us aboard your ship.
We're looking for some crew members. We're going to start a new life in the Americas. And they're like, yeah. And they just go. Like, yeah, I don't think that's what happened, but I think it's more likely than some of the other theories that are posited.
What, than a ghost ship?
Yes, I think it's more likely that a ship took them than a ghost ship.
Or that they were all turned into birds, but you think a ship's more likely?
I think a ship is more likely than men turning into birds, yes.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah. An interesting concept, I know.
No, yeah, that makes sense. Although I would wonder, you know, put myself in the mindset of a sea captain. I would wonder if I would want on my crew 3 men that would abandon their post as lighthouse keepers,
good point.
like almost certainly causing the death of another shipload of men on my ship, because it's kind of like, oh, you would like to abandon your post, do you? Your post that people rely on you for? No, you can't come onto my ship. I hope you all drown.
Yeah, that's a point. unless it was a ship, unless linking in with our sort of not penultimate, but the episode before last, on Blackbeard, if maybe some Scottish pirates came by and were like, "Hey, we'll make you a deal. We don't like that you're lighting up this part of the world because we want ships to come into perilous straits so we can ambush them. Join us." And they went, "Yeah, all right."
Yeah, I suppose that is an option.
Yeah, again, like I absolutely don't think it's likely or makes any particular sense. But
No. So I would say, aside from a ship coming to get them, rather than the question being like, how did they die, which most theories suggest they ended up in the sea,
yeah,
I think the bigger mystery is why they left the lighthouse in the first place.
yes, yeah,
But I would argue that the motive of not wanting your pay to be docked or to be charged for negligence, and so risking your life in a storm, would make sense.
I think so
But
too.
did the storms even happen? Who knows?
Ooh. Well, maybe that's something
Probably
that,
they
the
did.
Kelpies do. Maybe they create mirages to lure people out.
Ooh, maybe.
But yeah, no, I would agree. And I think also generally when you're risking your life, you don't necessarily go, "Oh, I'm risking my life." You just go, "Oh, this is a dangerous situation, but I'm gonna go into it because the alternative is not good, or what I might get out of it is
I
good."
think you can't. Yeah, you can't. He's got 20 years experience being a lighthouse keeper, and so that would suggest that he's probably done stuff like this before. And so Marshall was probably like, "Oh no, I didn't close the rope box properly on the west thing when the
I'm gonna
storm
get fined
starts."
another
And
5 shillings.
then Ducat's like, "Hey, chill out. We'll go and check it out.
Exactly.
MacArthur, you watch this and we'll be back in 5 minutes."
And then
it's probably what he did because he's
yeah,
done it for 20 years.
exactly. Like guides on Everest who are incredibly experienced going, "Oh yeah, don't worry, I'll bring these extra oxygen canisters up to these climbers. I've done it tons of times before, it'll be fine." And sometimes they just misjudge it, or circumstances change when they're already in a situation where they can't really back out.
Yeah, but I think the thing that confuses me the most is just whether there was bad weather or not, because it seems like everyone agrees that there was bad weather, apart from the people that don't want there to be bad weather because it makes it spookier.
Yeah. I reckon there was bad weather.
Well, also just thinking it's like mid-December in an island off of Scotland.
Yeah, that's
There's probably
true.
bad weather. Like, knowing the north, there's probably bad weather.
Exactly. And also it's like on a small rock in the middle of the sea, which is sort of a few hours sail or row or whatever from the mainland, it could plausibly be considerably more choppy than once it reaches the mainland. So if even people on the coast of Scotland might be like, "Oh gosh, it's a bit of a bit nippy tonight," and then further out it could be much more dangerous, I would imagine.
Well, also
that's possible
because it's an island group. I would imagine that the waves, at least on like a stormy day, would be like
broken.
You know how islands kind of get involved and make the waves bigger?
Yeah.
Kind of like that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, true. And then but they'd also
I was going to say, if you're on an island in the middle of the sea, basically, like any storm, I know that they're experienced lighthouse keepers, but any storm that's like bad enough to reach like 100 feet waves is probably going to be like, "Oh, we're quaking in our boots."
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah, exactly. Whereas if you're like in your house, you're like, "Oh, the sea sounds nasty tonight," and that's all you think.
Yeah. But yeah, I find it interesting anyway. Like, even though it's probably not a mystery and they just got caught out in a storm and were swept into the sea. I still find it interesting, just the fact that there were 3 men in a lighthouse for months at a time, just like, and the kind of psychological stuff that would cause. Because even if you're like the, you know, most mentally healthy person, I feel like being so cut off is eventually gonna cause some issues, whether it's just like between the 3 people that you can't get away from, or within yourself. I feel like it's
agreed. And either way, it's, again, like you say, it's one of those mysteries where it's like the mystery isn't necessarily what happened to them, but just like what were their last movements and what were their thoughts behind them.
A little note on the supernatural to close off the episode. Apparently, keepers up until the 1970s still reported to hearing the disappeared keepers' names whispered on the wind.
Oh, that's spooky as hell.
Thank you for listening to the Other Marthas podcast, the show where a drama student and a film graduate talk about things we have no business discussing. And we will see you in the next one.